think of it as a toolkit. Your toolkit is design, data, technology. And product is a way to stitch together those individual ideas. It's like a knowledge of those three different levers you have. Every product manager on LinkedIn is like, made 15 apps over the weekend. Yeah, up into the moon. And then poor designers like, I'm trying to think through the ethical implications of whether to do this or that. Transactional maximalist is just all about output. They don't even think to themselves that they're throwing many things against the wall to see what works. They're just like, I guess we got to do all the things. I've got to do all the things. Someone's told me to do all the things. So I don't know. That's a simple model for the way to think about it. But the important point, if you're at a startup, is
All right, welcome back to the Product House. We have something super exciting to share with you today.
This one we've been sitting on for a while, and we honestly been dying to share it and super pumped.
If you have ever listened to all the previous episodes, you'll realize there's one name has been kind of mentioned so many times, which is John Cutler. We still feel like we are in the dreams at the moment. So we actually managed to get him on the podcast, and we're just finishing a 1 hour conversation with him. And I feel like he doesn't really need a lot of intro.
Yeah, he was amazing, right? And just the clarity of thought and the eloquence, nothing surprising. But maybe for those who are new to the product space, John Cutler is a seasoned product leader, coach, and educator with over 2 decades of experience spanning product management, user research, and product enablement. He currently is the head of product at Dotwork, where he is exploring new ways of helping teams build better products through systems thinking and practical product craft. Before Dotwork, John held senior leadership and hands-on roles at Toast, Amplitude, Zendesk, and Pendo as well, working across product management, education, and enablement. He's widely respected in the global product community for his thoughtful writing, mental models, frameworks that really challenge cargo cult, agile, and surface the messy realities of product management. We had a lot of fun making this, and we hope you enjoyed too.
In this episode, we really dive into a lot of different aspects from in John's world. We're talking about product management, the future of it, and the product operation model, the impact of the AI. Really hope you enjoy it. See you soon. We have so many questions from our audience and us wanted to ask you. So before we started, we really wanted to start with some sort of quick rapid fire to helping people to get to know more about who is the real John Cutler.
Oh, okay. That sounds exciting. I'm ready.
Nice. So in the icebreaker section, you've got 30 seconds to answer some rapid fire questions.
Okay. Let me get my clock. I've got my timer here. I'll go on forever. So I always have my timer when I'm trying to talk. Okay. All right. Good. Sounds good.
All right. Go. Right. So who is the real John Cutler? How do you identify yourself?
Well, a dad, son. That's it, basically. You know, I think when it comes to work, maybe if it's work identity, I still haven't figured that out yet. I joke that I'm a thought fast follower. Like I don't self-identify as someone who's on the bleeding edge of all this stuff, but I am a keen observer, and I'm observing teams all the time and trying to capture my own thinking journey. So I'm a thinker, musician, although I haven't played music for a while. I'd like to get back in shape, so I'm going to force that identification on someone who's healthy, although I don't feel very healthy as a new parent. Yeah, and I've ended up in this crazy world of things. You know, I do talks, and for some reason people listen, and so that's exciting.
People
or pretend to listen. That's good.
Must be saying the right things.
Yeah.
Or something that's out.
All right. Second question. What are you building, shaping, or leading right now?
Yeah. I head a product at a company called Dotwork. Dotwork is strategic portfolio management 2.0. So for a long time, these products had no strategy in them whatsoever. They were all about kind of rolling up Jira and Work so that someone could fill out cost codes. And no leaders ever looked at the tools to begin with. And so we imagine that there's a second wave of these tools and AI will help, but that, it's time for leaders to actually use these as strategic tools. And so I'm excited.
I'm excited to see that as well. It's not only sometimes the leader not looking at the same tool, sometimes even the marketing of finance and IT all look at different tools. So we would love to chat a bit more about that later on. So the next rapid fire question is, what is a recent non-work scenes you learned or geek out about?
Well, we got a fish, an alpha, actually not an alpha, a beta. You can see where my head was at. So it's a beta fish or betta fish. That's been exciting. It's not the fanciest of fish. It's just the starter fish. But now I have an aquarium. I go and wipe the aquarium and I add the special stuff and I take out the water. So that's been kind of exciting. Simple pleasures, to be honest, because the day job is pretty time consuming. But yeah, a fish.
Fish. Love it. Well, next one is what's a mantra or quote you keep coming back to?
Oh, there's a couple that I really like. One is, think big, work small. That's a huge one. Another one is the why before the way. I always try to keep the why in mind. There's a little nerdier one about measurement where, powerful ideas imperfectly measured are better than perfect measures for not so powerful ideas. I like to think about that one a lot.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been into this sort of idea of avoid the justs, avoid the buts, and focus on the cans. Although that sounds almost rude when you say it, just assume good intent to say it.
There's actually quite a few. We're asking for one, we get like 4.
49 seconds too. I mean, sorry, I went over your time. So that's good.
Chopping it up.
Yeah, it's okay. That's the core editing. So, and last one is about what is your favorite app right now?
Yeah, I mean, I do like Cursor. It's fun. I like the vibe coding. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's my answer for now.
Awesome.
Yeah, nice. Well, thank you for playing with us. And that was quite thought-provoking, even as quick as it was. Many people know you from your writing and your Substack, A Beautiful Mess. They may not know your journey into product management as much. Would you be able to share with our audience your own journey?
Yeah, it's rather atypical too. And keep in mind, when I got involved in tech, you would just someone involved in tech, and then suddenly you were told, hey, you're doing product management at that point. And so it was definitely a journey starting at a startups and then working in another tech company and another company, but it probably wasn't even until 2015, maybe 10 years ago, that I started following this track of these B2B SaaS companies. Yeah, so for a long time, it was living in New York City, doing tech stuff. I was involved in music for a while. So, we were focusing on music and then doing tech on the side.
What type of music, can I ask?
I don't
Are
know.
they still out there?
Power pop, like rock music. I mean, not like boy band. I mean, it's power pop music. So rock, power pop.
Very
rock,
clear distinction.
Yeah. And then, very, very careful. This is not EDM. Let's put it that way. I did have a video game company where I made this bartending game.
Oh.
So that was my first product management job, was my own startup to try to make this game that we made. It was called Last Call. So it's a pretty circuitous journey, right? I haven't necessarily played by a particular track. And then I got really lucky. And if there was one lesson for people, and if he's listening, I have a friend whose name is Bruce. If it wasn't for Bruce kind of bringing me into the next company, I probably wouldn't be doing this. So it involved friends saying like, oh, I know this guy, John, and he could probably help us out. That was a good angle, and having a good friend in this.
That's amazing. So what would be, you say, is one of the most pivotal moments in your career or most memorable one?
Well, I mean, launching a game and doing all that kind of stuff was a real learning experience. I was so young, I was so stupid, so misguided about how to do it, but it was still a fun opportunity to work with a group of people and do it. So that was probably one. And we raised money. We had this moment when you're sitting there on Fifth Avenue, and my friend Joel and I were sitting there. It's like, we have a check for $250,000. Like, we can make, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but it was like, that's it. Like, we can go and make this game.
Yeah.
And that was pretty amazing. Probably when I first wrote this Feature Factory post that kind of blew up, I mean, that changed the trajectory of my career. And it was lucky that it did. Working at Amplitude was really lucky and a fascinating experience, getting to meet lots of teams. Yes, so pivotal moments along the way. That was, each one of them probably played a part and played a role.
Do you think that's a very different experience when you're running your own game company, then walking into a bigger organizations like Amplitude and play a product roles? Like, are they very different?
There was a lot of companies in between, realistically. So I didn't have to make that transition like that, but it is funny, your first experience professionally just doing it yourself. I mean, I remember at the time just getting a credit card. You get these credit card offers and it's like, we'll give you $5,000 or whatever, and saying, all right, that's it. I'm going to go to the department store and I'm going to get a computer. I'm going to go get a Compaq. with Windows 95 or something like that. And so these moments of, okay, this is real to do it, and being completely naive about every single thing. I mean, I still feel pretty naive about those things.
Yeah. It's very interesting, the theme of naivety and being young and trying your hands at different things. But I remember this quote from, funny enough, my driving instructor, and he was like, the harder I work, the luckier I get. I feel like oftentimes, as much as luck is a big part of success, we don't give ourselves enough credit for the actual hard work that we put into to get us to the
And
right spot.
finding a
Right? So,
vector for the hard work. I've certainly had jobs where it
yes.
wasn't like I couldn't work
Yes.
hard enough in that job, right? A good example of that is amplitude, like having that vector for work in, results out is really, really
Yes.
important.
Yes.
And it's also very important when you think about hiring or anything where a poorly thought out role for someone where they don't have a vector to pour their hard work into is actually the most demoralizing thing. I think in general, people want to work hard, right? And then you figure out where there is a lane. And I'm in this big believer of this idea of lanes. And I remember being on a team pretty early in my career where someone said, John, it's all about the lanes you design for your team. Really the framework you use or Scrum or anything like that doesn't really matter. All this other stuff doesn't matter. It's about finding like viable lanes that are the right amount of challenge that people can feel like they're pushing the rock up the hill and making progress as they're doing it. And that's kind of stuck with me for a long time, because if you've ever been on a team where things go in circles, you can have 3 people in a lane too. It's not about individually having a lane. It's just there's no vectors for hard work. And when you give passionate people no vectors for hard work, they invent work. And also, they just get frustrated and work around what you're doing.
It reminds me of Daniel Pink's writing around his book Drive, and he equates it to having clear purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And it's the different vectors that allow the team to kind of accelerate, right? You've built a strong voice in the product world through a lot of your writing. Could you tell us a little bit more about what started you off in starting to share your writing? I assume it started before this Product
A
Factory
little
post.
bit before, but not too much before. I remember I wrote a couple LinkedIn articles. That was in maybe 2015 or 14 or something. And yeah, I was just exploring on Medium, starting to write these posts. And yeah, there wasn't a lot beforehand to do. That was kind of the start of it. It happened pretty quickly from starting to write these things. Now, it hasn't been rosy this whole time. Often, for example, the people I'm working with think I'm writing about them, just because there's some similarity between what I'm talking about and something.
Pattern recognizing, the people just decide to say, I'm the patent, basically.
Well, it's funny too. I think it was Spencer from Amplitude said, "Oh, is that about me?" And I said, "There's a Carly Simon song. I don't know if Carly Simon wrote it, but it's like, you probably think this song is about you, don't you? Don't you? Don't you?" And it was basically like, it's not about you. I'm definitely a pattern matcher across these things, and so when I write these things, it's influenced by many conversations often coming to a head. So I've been watching and observing a pattern or a theme, and I'm kind of trying to thread the similarities between those particular things. Some of them work, some of them don't. I don't spend so much time worrying about the posts. Like last night's post, maybe a 6, it's okay. Like there'll always be another post. And it's how I thought about it with songwriting. I was much more, when I used to be involved in songwriting, I didn't worry about perfecting a song. It was like, that's an all right song. There's another song. There's another song to write. Just don't stress. This is not your last song that you're going to write. Same thing with products, same things with writing or anything like that. And it's funny because I'm sort of with the writing, I'm like output over outcomes. It's just better to keep the muscle going. Whereas some of these people, they're like, oh my God, I'm going to write the most viral post, or, it's so crafted and framed and do these things. And my attitude is like, I'm a numbers game person. If 1 out of 5 of them work in the time it takes you to write that one post, I'll write 5 of them. And so one of them work. The downside of that, of course, it makes it very difficult sometimes for people to process my work. They just see 1,000 posts and they're like, what's this guy about? I don't get him. Or he doesn't write anything actionable. And then I'm like, oh, did you see posts like, then 111, 352, 457? I've written these 3 playbooks that you can read. I've done workshops with all your actionable advice. So it's always a trade-off, right? If you think too hard of it as a product and stress too about it, you can run into trouble. But if you just just blast people all the time with the information, it also becomes problematic. So I'm always trying to find that balance
So
between
done
doing it.
is better than perfect. And then you're constantly reaching out, experimenting with your ideas. I have to say, the quality of both of your writing is actually pretty high, and they are very, very consistent. So we are, as a creator ourselves, we are very, very curious about your workflow. Is how do you managing to keep all this channel, have all the contents out while doing your day job? So what's your workflow like to capture this idea and then have them turning to become something tangible?
Okay, this is going to sound crazy. I don't have any note-taking system. I don't keep track of a backlog of ideas. I start and finish. That's how I do it.
Okay. What do you mean by
I
start,
write
finish?
everything in one go. I don't get up until it's done.
Wow.
I knock it out and then move on. And if I'm inspired by something, I try to capture. I don't worry about it. It's not like, I really want to post that thing on LinkedIn. That's why I'm so bad at the algorithms. You know, they say that like, oh, don't post more than one time. If I have a day and I have 5 ideas, I'm just going to get the ideas down there. And funnily enough, Google is my LLM or the rag of my writing. Like I have done these exercises where I put all my writing and tried to connect them and be more structured about it. But for having a full-time job and doing this other stuff, I don't have time for all that. I don't have time to be so thoughtful about it. I just, when I have the idea, I finish it. And when I sit down to write, I finish it. And then press publish and just move down.
Now, what about different channel then? Because at the moment, it sounds like you are using linking almost like your notepad, you think putting your thoughts in. But then you do have long form contents at the same time in the beautiful mess. So how do you make decision around every thought?
I don't.
Which channel you just
I just write it and press publish. That's it.
put
Yeah, right.
in all channel?
Yeah. I don't worry.
Nice.
But I'm just saying this to the extreme example. Like, is this the right way
Yeah.
to do it? No. Is this if you're a creator and you're trying to make a living off of all this stuff? No. Could I definitely be more thoughtful about it? Yes. But for me, could I be more thoughtful about it? No. Like, no,
Yeah.
I have a limit to that. And so I've just found the groove that works for me or doesn't work. You know, it's always a trade-off. Like, would it be better if I said, oh, I'm going to write only about metrics? There was someone on Reddit that said, there's like, I don't understand what that Cutler's talking about anymore. Geez, he should have stayed with the actionable content. Now he only writes about org culture and org design. I don't even get it. And I was like, yep. That's the trade-off, you know, like if I had been a one-trick pony, then he would still like that pony, but I don't worry about it too much.
We both of us love the kind of org model, org design stuff. I
Yes.
think because of our background, does the idea come complete in your head and then you just document it? Or is the writing itself a way that you use to help shape the thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I have this app, it's called Flow State. Flow State blocks out the whole screen. Then you start writing, and then if you stop writing, it erases what you have. So you have to keep writing, set Flow State to 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Just go, just write it, edit later, just go for it. And then if there's more research involved and there's other things, like don't spend 7 hours writing a post, you know, just knock it out, an hour or two max, like get the thing done. That's been my approach to do it.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, it's weird, I know, but it's that's just what's worked for me. So if that's motivation for anyone, find what works for you. That's the
Yeah,
main
no,
thing.
that clearly worked for you because at the moment for us outsider, everyone just impressed. So speak of the operation model and framework, I want to change the tactic a little bit. I saw you continuously rating so many operation model, best practice. I really wanted to know what's your true views about them. What's the biggest difference about these playbook and operations applying in the startup scenes or large organizations? Are they very different, or do you believe there's actually a very, very similar set of patterns that can apply to all sorts of organizations?
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm actually going to bring something up too because I was working on it for work today. The thing that's stuck with me is you could think of an operating model as doing a set of jobs, and the context will very much vary how it does those jobs, but all things are going to be doing a job. So I'll give you an example. You know, if you look at operating systems, and now at Dotwork, I look at hundreds of these operating systems. So I'm speaking from like firsthand, you know, evidence-based experience. I broke it down into 8 jobs. 1, an operating system maintains a value architecture or a value model of some kind. Operating system will help discover and prioritize the what and the how. Operating systems will align capacity to strategy and priorities, surface and route escalations, support execution, assess impact, circulate insights, give financial and operational sort of oversight, and then shape and give you ability to shape and grow that capacity that you have. So using that particular model, though, just thinking about the day job and Dotwork, We have a customer. How do they manage capacity? They just tell teams don't do more than 3 things at once. They're not a startup exactly, but they're just really low process overhead. How do we think about prioritization? Well, roughly we ask teams to do this kind of EBITDA estimate using our tool, but we factor in value confidence and effort confidence and comes up with a number. But we use that as a heuristic, but we're surfacing opportunities that way. And we
Pretty
believe in the idea of
sophisticated.
the opportunity solution idea, right? So we differentiate the problem statement from the thing. Great. What's your oversight mechanism? Like, what are you doing to make sure that you're providing some financial oversight? Well, you have that EBITDA number, which is important, but we do some other things. Anyway, I could go down the list. So they check all the boxes. And so when you have a startup, you're in a different context altogether, right? You're discovering that value model. You're generating new insights all the time. You're going to take a much lighter weight approach to some of those things because everything is breaking. In a startup, everything you do breaks every 3 to 6 months. So it doesn't make sense to spend super long trying to figure out the be all end all way to address those things. However, another Dotwork customer, how do you think about capacity allocation? Well, we ask people to estimate, we ask people to assign allocations, we do these annual plans that last out 1 year, we do a 7-stage annual
Definitely not a
planning
startup.
exercise. And, that's okay for that particular setting, or it might be okay. So I think that that's the first thing that every company is doing those jobs. They're doing the jobs of value model, discovery and prioritization, aligning capacity, surfacing and routing issues, all those things.
Can I ask one question? Just
Yeah.
sorry for interrupt you here, because you have an assumption that every single organization trying to do this value model. And then I guess for some startup, they might have the mindset as how you're doing the content creation part before. It's just, I'm so early in my business model. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to throw everything. It's either too extreme. A lot of this depends on the founder, right? If the founder is from the enterprise corporate product background, they coming in to bring in everything. OKR, goal setting, roadmap, every single thing in the very early on, which probably annoys everyone. Or is on the other extreme is to say, let's just throw things out without thinking about any strategy. Just do everything. Like whatever it is today, I feel like putting these things on my company website. We do that. Tomorrow we're thinking about that. So what's your view? Do you, in this situation, do you believe they should start thinking strategically at the early on, or should they just go wild?
I will use a 2x2 to describe it to people. So imagine on one side you have maximalists and you'd have what I'd call architects, right? And on the other spectrum, you have strategic and not very strategic. What I've learned is that there are strategic maximalists. So strategic maximalists believe that they want to put many things in the fire all at once. They want to get going with put multiple irons in the fire. They're always asking, why not more? Why aren't we doing more? Why aren't we trying more? Why aren't we doing those things? Now, the architect thing, a strategic architect is thinking, what's the least amount we can do to achieve the goal? They're like a minimalist, right? Or in some ways of their thinking, they're very systems thinking. Now, the maximalist would say, let's try 10 experiments and one will stick, and then we'll double down on that. The minimalist is like, let's focus on one thing to be able to do it. The important thing is that both of them can be strategic and rather transactional. So a transactional architect is very process focused. They're not thinking about strategy. A transactional maximalist is just all about output. They don't even think to themselves that they're throwing many things against the wall to see what works. They're just like, I guess we got to do all the things. I've got to do all the things. Someone's told me to do all the things. So I don't know. That's a simple model for the way to think about it. But the important point, if you're at a startup, is you often don't pick the founders. You get involved with what they're doing. And part of what you need to do is really lean into, am I dealing with a maximalist? Am I dealing with someone who's all about laser focus? And depending where you say, most founders wouldn't be where they were if they were minimalists. They believe that something's possible that is not yet possible in the world. So they tend to be kind of like maximalists in some ways. And so once you kind of figure that out, it helps you adapt your behavior according to the folks that are doing it. But to your point too, there's other founders, the consultant founders, people who've come from a McKinsey or someplace like that. They have a different view of how it's run. There's technical founders. They're just like, they're going to build their way out of the problem. There's design founders. They're going to design their way out of the problem. There's product founders. There's sales founders. They're going to sell their way out of the thing. And so you start to realize it's like, you gotta read the room and see the culture. but the mechanisms remain the same. Here's an example. Some companies choose to make their value model very explicit and explain it, and we're going to do North Star framework, and we're going to name everything on the list, and we're going to get everyone bought in. Some companies, it's all implicit. It's the founder saying, I think a flywheel exists right here. This is the underlying idea that a flywheel exists, that we're going to kick butt here. Is one right or wrong? That's a tough call. That's very cultural. And you might have a preference, but you have to kind of roll with what exists in the particular company. I met a company recently from Northern Europe. He's like, we don't use goals. We don't have anything. We just work. We just figure out problems, and that's how we do it. Great. Problem, they haven't been able to hire anyone who stays at an executive level for more than a couple months. Why? Because there's such a hive mind of how they work that when they bring in someone who needs to be like given the direction with goals, and like they don't know what to do. So now they have to think about how to make their company more accessible. That's the real world out there of these things, is you can't hold any of these frameworks or ideas too preciously, and that there's many ways to achieve the same core building block of your operating system.
That makes sense.
So with the work that you're currently doing, there's obviously a broad spectrum of customers with different operating models, right? I think one of the trends is a lot of organizations are, regardless of whether they're product organizations or not, thinking or trying to adopt product operating models.
Yeah.
Have you actually seen it work in kind of non-product organizations? Maybe it's a small business or consulting firm or government agencies. Any examples that you've come across?
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing that kind of stuff every day. I would try to reframe the particular challenge, right? Which is, if you think of the product operating model as essentially a snapshot of various principles that are context free, like any business book, business books tend to be context free and shoot for mass appeal, right? You want something that's going to be true everywhere, so you have to simplify it down to what you're doing. So if I were to look at the principles at play, I would say, of course, companies are doing these things. I meet non-digital product selling companies, and they're taking principles from that. Like, oh, there's a principle around discovery, or, oh, there's a principle around cross-functional teams that we've had for a while, or, oh, there's a principle around, leaders define the problem, and they've done those things. And they're doing really, really well doing those particular things. And so I think that's something to keep in mind, is that people imagine that the way to do these things is to copy all the specific behaviors that you might see in some big tech company, where in actuality, it's a little bit more practicing the principles at play. And one of the tools that I used while I was in Amplitude, because we dealt with a lot of companies that didn't sell digital products, that they were like a non-digital product selling company who wanted to become more product led, is that I said, look, think of it as a toolkit. Your toolkit is design, data, technology. And product is a way to stitch together those individual ideas. It's like a knowledge of those three different levers you have. And the question is, that's your toolkit. So are you using that toolkit to create sources of differentiated growth that benefits the company, the customer, your community, or whatever? And I really like that toolkit idea versus the idea of like it's some mythical mindset or mythical sense or mythical whatever. I really like the idea that it does involve technology. It does involve data. It does involve design. It involves those things for sure. Those are your levers. But how you apply that will be very contextual. The good news for any large enterprise hoping to use that toolkit is, my goodness, there's no shortage of problems that could benefit from savvy design, savvy technology, savvy use of data. And now with AI, it's some combination of all those to solve problems. Who wouldn't benefit from that kind of toolkit? And so I tend to take a kind of toolkit view of what we're talking about versus a specific mindset or a specific model that's set in stone.
I really love that, because at the moment, a lot of these big enterprise service-based company, they have their product team, they have their product managers, they have their designers. In general, if you go to most of these events, you realize there's a lot of them feel a bit lost, because a lot of this book in the Silicon Valley written is all about product company. A lot of OKR, all the example that provides product company. So sometimes a lot of PM always talking about, well, what will be my career path in this sort of organizations? But I like what you mentioned there. Essentially, it's thinking about, you almost have a tool set of the skill set you can still improve yourself on. And there's an operation principle your organization can still adopt. So it doesn't mean that what you do here is less producty or less designing than the other organization. You can still grow, increase your toolkit in this context.
Another thing too is, especially now in the Valley, look, it's hard in tech right now. whatever these companies are saying publicly, when you talk to people inside the companies, it's an incredibly hard time. People feel gaslit. People feel like you can't talk about reality. People talk about a level of toxic positivity in a lot of tech companies right now, and that it really bothers them. And when you see their CEOs and founders on LinkedIn or wherever talking like up into the moon, like, oh, they're great. And the people at the company and they're like, this is a level of post-traumatic stress disorder that we've experienced in this company. Like, this is not a happy place at the particular moment, no matter what the public news is, to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I want people to keep that in mind, that if you have a regional company with passionate leaders who have in their heart the idea that they can use that toolkit to provide outcomes for other humans, you might not be going as fast. You might not be making quite as much money or losing as much money, however you want to look at it. But there are plenty of opportunities if you're willing to move at a like slightly slower pace at what you're doing. And when you see what people are doing in government now in different countries, or in service design or large non-digital product companies, you get a level of thoughtfulness among the leaders about the longer view. It's a decision to be involved in a fast-paced AI disrupted tech ecosystem type startup at the moment is going to be really, really stressful and tap a lot of your energy and life force. So you have to think about this carefully for what you want to do. And meaning that if your path went back and forth between these types of companies, it's not a liability. This idea of like tiers of company. Oh, are you at a tier 1 tech company? And if you got that, does having one of those companies on your resume help? Yes. Does having all of them on your company help? Maybe for your pocketbook if the market was going up, but maybe not, right? And so you don't need to kill yourself going through that rigmarole over time. Maybe dipping into one of those companies to see what it's like for a bit, and then building your resume in other places is perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good advice. Because I think at the moment, the tier kind of mindset definitely happening, especially in the product management world. Traditionally, everyone always feel like only if you're working in the real product company like Netflix, like Spotify, then you are considered as a real product managers. So I think what you basically shared there is really comforting. Since you mentioned about AI and all the operating disruptions it's bringing to the world, so I am really curious about what do you think is the biggest impact around AI bringing to the whole product operating model and product thinking?
I mean, it's accelerating a change in how people collaborate and work. There's potential too for maybe more effective sharing of context, which has been kind of difficult. So the ability to have deep context on a certain customer problem or customer domain and share that context. Now, was that something that was impossible before? No. In other words, let's say that you've got 4 teams, they come to like a product review and they're sharing the insights and all the things about their particular group. Could they do it before? Yes. Did they do it? Not so much. In other words, there was kind of a limiter in terms of the rate limiter for the distribution of context in the company and distribution of data to make it more accessible to people. The framework that I have been working on actively in my head when I think about this is 2 frameworks. One is looking at the nature of the work and the current state of the work and what the opportunity is. So very, very simply, sometimes there's transactional work that we are forced to be collaborative over. Like, oh my God, could you just read the email? Like, for Christ's sakes, could you just look at the doc? It didn't benefit from the collaborative session, but you have that meeting where like, now we're going to do the readout. And everyone's like, oh, come on. Now, that's one opportunity for AI, right? Which is to just share that context, share that information. The flip side is true too, though. There's work that should be collaborative that is forced to be transactional because people are so busy doing the other stuff that they don't have time when they really need to get together and then work deliberately together and share context and have really close interaction with each other. There's all sorts of busy work that gets in the way of making room. So when I talk to people about AI, it's like, what are your opportunities to make the mundane less collaborative? That's low value, mundane activities you're doing. And the other one is, where do you want to have close, really vibrant collaboration with people? And how can AI help with that? Maybe it's about sharing context with it. So I think that that's one that's shaping how people work. So companies are trying to pain kill. And I'll give you specific examples. Like, imagine you're a SaaS company, you've got 10 key customer segments, and anytime a product manager does a product release, they need to basically reshape their release notes for 10 different audiences. Now, was that a cognitively hard activity? No. I could teach a college student to do it.
Mm.
Was it a pain in the butt? Yes. Was it
Yes.
such a pain in the butt that either they didn't do it or they just punted it off to product marketing to do it and they didn't do it? Yes. Perfect example. Relatively simple cognitive activity that just didn't happen. Answer. Write prompts that reflect each of your 10 different customer segments and are like writing coaches to reframe your release notes for those 10 different audiences. Make a pull request for product marketing. They read it, they accept it, go, boom, 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 it's out there. So that's an example of the particular thing. The important point, though, I wanted to dig in with that, and I was going to mention a second framework we're thinking about it, is very much goes, there's a model called Cynefin, and it talks about the
Our
different
favorite.
types of problems that exist, right? It's kind of like you've got, I think it's called plain now, but maybe plain and simple, complicated,
Mm.
complex, and chaotic
Complex.
or whatever. I would add to that this idea of context. There's contextful and then context free. So stick with me on this. A lot of physics problems are context free, hyper complicated. Guess what? Computers are really, really good at that. AI is really, really good at that because the context is not adding anything to it. Now think about writing meeting notes. You are a chief of staff, you attend meetings, and you're doing the simple activity, but it's high context, simple activity. Perfect for AI in another ways, right? Where are we potentially going to abuse AI and get in the way are highly contextful, complex human activities where there was a lot of magic that happened between people. And we're going to think that AI is going to solve those particular things. So example, instead of getting together a group of people and processing customer feedback together where the conversations and the context was part of the value, it's a complex contextual activity. Someone just types in, says, I've dumped all the research into the thing and it tells us to build these 5 things.
Or I simulate. I have an AI agent to be able to simulate our customers to be able to go through the whole customer journey. So I don't need to talk to the real customers.
Right. It's the don't talk to the real customers. However, coming up with a proto customer journey by putting a lot of data in there and sort of saying, I'm going to come up with V1 of our customer journey using a lot of basically synthesis activities. Is it this stage? Is it that stage or whatever? Great use of it, right? Like that's the type of thing that now you're talking to someone who loves when there's 1,000 sticky notes on a piece of paper. I love that. I could spend all day clustering 1,000 sticky notes. I actually get joy out of that. A lot of people do not get joy out of that particular thing.
Very true.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's a great way. I think those 2 frameworks together, the first one about like, what's the nature of the task? What's the current state of the task and how AI can help is probably one way. And then a similar model is, what's the nature of the work and how does context play into it? Meaning if it's a context-free problem that in your company's context doesn't matter, and it's a complicated problem where brute forcing with the world's knowledge will help, well, that's a really good example of those particular things. And so obviously the simple, the lower left of the thing is already, we've probably already replaced it at the moment too.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you for sharing all the frameworks. I'm going to take it as a personal challenge because I do have a design background to kind of try to visualize every one of the models we've discussed today.
Yeah. Then I'll send you my version and we'll see how close we got.
Love it. I do have a kind of questions around this. There was a lot of pushback about the whole discovery activity. That's why they have so many great literatures and thought leader in the area talking about the importance about understanding why. But I think with the AI now, with the ability to be able to just build things without thinking too much about problem to solve. So I hear so many of these new terms around opportunity-led or opportunity-driven development. So there's a lot of push around, should we just actually skip the traditional discovery, just get into build, put things in the market and see what land? I'm interested to hear a little bit your view around this. Where do you place discovery?
It's so funny. It's like poor lean startup. First it was the biggest thing and then everyone was like, oh, we don't need that stupid leans. Once it hit the reality of founders, they're like, oh, who wants to deal with reality here? I've got a lot of funding. That's just going to go to the moon, right? And then it was like, that was like blitz scaling, right? So when capital was cheap, blitz scaling. When capital was not cheap, then lean startup. Now what are we back to again? It's like, it's all AI, those things. What I would say is it really depends on the question all the time. And so when you think about research questions, there's many different types of research questions, right? There's exploratory questions, contextual questions, strategic questions, generative questions, evaluative questions, explanatory questions, descriptive questions, definitional questions. All of those are out there. And so it boils down to what are you hoping to test? Like, what is the question that you have? And so it's the same same thing that UX researchers and design have always talked about, right? Which is, are we evaluating this? Is this evaluative? Am I trying to do I believe that I've come up with a better solution versus some other baseline, other idea? Is it better? Now, the next thing is, wow, am I just trying to generate ideas? There is a certain design idea for like generative design, which is what are our options? What are our possible futures? Okay, maybe AI is helpful for that. Important point though is that AI has strengths and weaknesses across each of those. So for example, explanatory questions. You want to explain what is happening, what factors underlie it, what causes it, what helps make it happen. Problem of AI, it wants to please you. So it will come up with an explanation for everything. Probably weaker at that. However, definitional, what do we mean by where and how is it defined? That's really good. That's in a sweet spot of the thing. Now, I know you asked me about building and sort of opportunity first thing, but in general, I try to think of that stuff as like, why are we doing what we're doing and what are we hoping to learn? And so if this is are we trying to explore, is this option better than what's out there in the world? Great. Are we trying to explain, like, so what? You put something out there into the world and somehow people like it. It's important to know why they like it. So an explanatory question that might come out from that is doing it. Well, actually, I think it's kind of funny because UX research got hit incredibly hard because of layoffs. And of course, the way companies work is they have to come up with like a tech bro narrative for why everything has happened, right? So instead of saying like, oh, our businesses got fleeced and SaaS wasn't going to make enough money, they had to come up with a reason why we're flattening the org and we need people who are doers, not working around the work. They're going to come up with whatever vibe thing they can, right? So then, UX research got pretty hard. But then what also got hit hard was then it was continuous discovery. We need to all be researching together. I think you're always in one phase or another with some kind of like shift in the narrative of who's building and how they're building and why they're building and how they're learning, and poor design because they seem to get the brunt end of the stick all the time anyway. So yeah, there you go.
What about PM then?
Product
So
is
what
a
do you
lot
think?
better at selling what they're doing. Have you noticed that? It's crazy. Every product manager on LinkedIn is like, made 15 apps over the weekend. Yeah, up into the moon, and then poor designers like, I'm trying to think through the ethical implications of whether to do this or that, and I'm not seeing the quality of design I'm looking for. PM, through the moon, I launched 7 startups over the last 2 weeks. Come and take my new AI course. Poor designer is like, realistically, I don't know a lot about AI. I'm learning around with everyone. Product manager, I've done it for 2 weeks. Trust me, I'm going to sell you a course. Designers could learn something from PMs a little bit in this case, is that there's a lot of PMs like fake it till you make it, unfortunately. And designers don't like faking it till they make it. But it's unfortunate, in this environment. Like if I read one more, the PM role is dead, but I'm going to sell you a course kind of thing. It's all product managers typically.
Yes. Yeah.
But do you think the role of the PM will exist in the next 5 years, and how this role will actually shift with the AI? Will they actually all stop doing the actual PM, start selling courses? Or you reckon they will actually...
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. No, I mean, when they're done getting everyone else laid off from their companies, so that's what they're going to do because they're better at persuaders. You see, that's the problem with product. Engineers, though, hold some cards in this particular situation as well.
It just becomes like PMs trying to sell other PMs PM and productizing that, and kind of infinite kind of regression into everyone becomes a PM.
Oh, yeah. It's like, again, PMs are savvy shits in some ways, right? Because they just see the way that the market's going. That's why they're product managers. So meanwhile, designers are like, oh, how can we co-design? How can we do this? What are the first Maven courses? How to X your lifetime earnings in salary and then work at a tier 1 company. I'm going to tell you how to do this. Designers are like, how do we make the world better? And like, how do we do this? And so it's very, it can get pretty toxic out there in terms of the implications of all these. But I think back to your question, there are skills involved. There is a large set of skills that's still going to be relevant. How AI feeds into those skills is going to be an interesting thing. And how it will change the workflows of how we work and the, like right now, for example, there's so much like knowledge transfer that's transactional, whereas you want to spend your high quality time generating feedback. So I use prototypes a lot. I make prototypes for our customers very quickly. Our platform makes it really easy for me to do it in a sustainable way. But you kind of need to know what to do with that, right? which is like I met an engineering founder the other day and they're like, oh, the role of product is to figure out what people want and ask them what they want and then build that, right? And I was like, see how many people who can accurately decide what they want and then that we'll have a conversation. So there's still a lot to learn for folks out there, even with AI in the picture, I think.
So you are quite hopeful, essentially, optimistic about the role of the PM, because there's also a lot of, every single podcast we listen to is, if we listen to a designer podcast, they were talking about, actually, this could be the opportunity for designer because they can do the whole standoff thing. They can do the developer, they can do PM's role now. If you listen to an engineer podcast, they were like, engineer is going to rule the world for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's more likely in the United States that we won't have a democracy in a couple years than product managers, right? So like, I think we have to keep the scale, we have to keep the relative importance of the question in mind.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Or maybe we didn't have one this whole time. It was the PMs running the show anyway the whole time.
We are at hours. Time really fly really quick. However, we do have a lot of people from our community.
We're going to answer them all. Like, I'm going to answer them in like 10 sec. We're going to do the 10-second answer game.
The first question from our audience is Paru Madhavan, who kind of connected us initially. She's a product coach from the ABC. Paru says, so excited to see the podcast collab happen. John Cutler, when are you visiting Australia in person?
Yeah, maybe my summer, your winter would be a fun time to do it. That would be good.
Nice. And then the actual question is, if you had to summarize the advantage of a product operating function in one or two lines to a leadership team who have never worked with one, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say a product ops team will first do pain killing. And so that by I mean just like reducing the overall friction that has to take place for a lot of things. So that's one of the big benefits. And that will allow people to spend their time on higher leverage things that they're doing. And I think that the second thing is improving decision quality across the organization, which will lead to better outcomes. So more access to data, more access to strategic context, more access to customers, easier access to customers, less odd context switching things that exist, like all of those within the purview of product ops function. And so I would say that, if the overall decision quality improves and PMs can spend more of their time on high leverage activities, then ultimately, that will improve business outcomes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think the second question is from Diane Ann. She's a senior manager, product manager from the Flexi School. So it's actually a question about stakeholder management. So she wanted to understand your approach on relationship building and the stakeholder management within a large organization, especially the global organization with different time zones.
Yeah, I can't claim I'm particularly good at this, so we should probably skip the question. But having observed people who seem very good at this, I would say that there's like 2 or 3 things they seem to do well. Number one, they play the long game. They are willing to let things fall apart a bit in order to build that strong relationship. And so by that means you're willing to let people make their mistakes. You're willing to let things play their course, and the time will tell when you can build that relationship. The second thing is co-designing common mental models for things together that allow you to hang ideas off of the same idea. So example would be product wants to do some crazy thing that doesn't make any sense to finance, and finance has some model that makes sense to them. But it's kind of meeting them in the middle and co-designing a framework together that speaks both of the language together, that you feel ownership in, that people are willing to advocate for, would be the second thing. And I think that the third thing is this idea of almost like approach market fit, where when you've really nailed the relationship with a stakeholder, you'll find it's a big step change more than if you've just at a 5. Like a 9 stakeholder relationship is like an order of magnitude more effective. Like with products, instead of being like, yeah, I've got product market fit, with this, I think I have a good relationship with this stakeholder. It's really waiting before you take a lot of big risks until you really feel that pull. Like when you really feel that pull, they're ringing you randomly, or they're asking your perspective on things, and they're sending you the signals that you've gotten to this point. Whereas before, they might be eager to learn what you have to say and give you the benefit of the doubt, but you still haven't gotten to that like real point of trust yet. They'll almost like take advantage of you for your thoughts, but then if the going gets hard, they might flip on you and not be as effective. So really waiting for those strong signs of like stakeholder approach fit, I would say.
Love
Love
it.
that.
You say you are not good at it, but it was actually really good. 3 points. Learn a lot.
Oh,
from
I'm a
that.
pattern. I can see what other people are doing well. Like, those things are hard to do.
Third question is from Justin Farrell, who's a product coach from Greenstone Financial Services. And Justin says, my question to John would be, what is the hardest product habit leaders have to unlearn because it them successful in the first place?
I was chatting with someone about this recently, and I think it's over-indexing on good news. You obviously want people to be excited. You want people to be engaged. You want to be able to pitch your wins. But I have noticed that habit in the beginning is people are so eager to like pitch their wins and pitch those things. And the problem with that is that you stop applying the same rigor to your wins as you do when things aren't going as well. So what I mean by that is like when things are going well, it's a little bit like, don't ask, don't tell, just go, just go, just go. And then when things are going wrong, it's a little bit like, what's going wrong? I need to get into the details. And so I think that in the beginning for folks, that's good because it gives them visibility in the org and it helps them sort of sell themselves. But I think it stops becoming useful because you start relying on luck. You start relying on the habits that you have when things are going well versus just like trying to build like a regular introspection. So very practically what that would mean is you're applying the same rigor for when things go well and trying to like review and extract the learnings from it than you do when things are going poorly. And then that sets a nice consistent theme among your folks. So when the people who work for you are like, oh, when things are going well, I don't hear from them for 3 weeks. When things are going badly, I hear from them every day. That form of management, I think, just has a lot of limitations. And yet it's a habit that people need to unlearn.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Consistency. And the consistency of the communication, I think, just like your blog, coming out every day, sometimes there'll be something super amazing. Some of them will be something good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Thanks so much for your time, John.
On a personal note, just love the clarity of thought and the eloquence that you kind of bring to these conversations. You really need to do this a lot more often.
Oh, I'll try. Yeah, maybe I'll clean up my image out there. Cool. Yeah, so
Thank you,
much,
John.
and thank you so
Yeah.
much, and good luck with the podcast.